So a thesis or dissertation is more than just a graduation requirement, but it's rather a contribution to your field of study and a demonstration of your research skills. So this manuscript that you end up writing must meet certain academic standards recognized by TAMIU's graduate school and as well as your college. TAMIU offers resources and guidance such as a manual that I'm going to pull up soon and departmental support to help you create a strong, polished document. So today we'll focus on the essential aspects from starting with your proposal. And they might have asked you already to start working on your proposal if you're registered for these thesis classes and up until final submission and your thesis deadline. So these guidelines are going to give you that overall picture, the bigger picture at hand. That way you're ready to start writing and actually polish everything. But I think the most important part here is the resources that are available to you that you might not know about. I know that when you're starting off a thesis, it might feel like you're in it alone, especially if you're already registered for one of the classes. But there is a lot of support systems and a lot of helpful guides available online that you can access at any time, and it's completely free for all students. So to get started, I think you can guess what the first step is when you're ready to write your thesis. We actually structure the thesis writing process as courses. So that would be the initial step. First, you enroll in two key courses. So the first thesis 5398, is for writing your proposal most of the time. And then the actual thesis 2, 5399, is for your final manuscript. So whether you're on the first one or second one, I think that you should keep these timelines in mind because they do have their own individual deadline. Once you have registered for these classes, you will be prompted on that first course to select your graduate advisory committee. And this is basically just a group of scholars, and they can be within your college, and they prefer you have somebody outside of your college as your committee. So it's going to have one chair and 3 committee members. So they're going to play a significant role in guiding your research, providing feedback, and of course, ultimately approving your work. After all, your publication or your thesis or dissertation is going to be a reflection on their advice to you. It is as easy as just choosing them, asking professors in your college or outside your college to join your committee, but there is a formality you have to take if you haven't taken this just yet. You need to submit a request for service on graduate advisory committee form. And this is available on our website, so you can download, have everybody sign, and then you can send that over to the graduate school so they know who's advising you on your thesis. So you need to submit this form, and it's basically just a formalization of the involvement of these different faculty members in your project. The members that you choose are going to play a crucial role in developing your thesis. Ultimately, as far as writing, it's going to fall on you, but the content, the overall sources that you use perhaps, or any other guidance that might help you are going to come from your committee members. So this is that foundational knowledge that's going to be critical as you start nearing the end and in the middle of your thesis. And it's typically they'll give you some ideas as well. So begin with the proposal development with the committee's guidance. So if you haven't started yet or you're going to register, it's best to consult with the committee right from the beginning. That way they can give you advice on how to position yourself for a worthwhile thesis and worthwhile deliverables. You're going to need your proposal. So let's talk the proposal. It's going to mark the start of your research journey and needs to be well thought out because it's going to outline all your research intentions and your method. So typically, they'll require by the end of that first semester for you to submit a 10-page narrative body, which kind of outlines these research intentions with your methodologies. And yes, we have a guide on our website to show you what the format of this tends to look like. So you don't have to completely start from scratch. You can base it on some of the formats that we have. So this should detail your research problem, your objectives, and your proposed methodology. And then you would defend this proposal to your advisory committee. Of course, they're going to be highly involved in your project anyway. So by the time you get to the defense of your proposal, they'll pretty much have guided you by then. Once your advisory committee approves it, they like your ideas, then you would present it to COAS, your College of Arts and Sciences, if that applies to you, and graduate school. So following that successful defense, you'll have to submit it along with the signed proposal cover sheet. There's a cover sheet that you need to submit along with this proposal. And of course, that cover sheet, along with all the other forms that I mentioned today, are conveniently housed on our website, which I'll show you in just a little bit, show you each one of these different forms. But they're all centralized in one place. That way you know exactly what forms need to be filled out when. All right. So make sure that you have that thesis dissertation cover sheet. It basically just marks that approval that you have officially entered into the thesis or dissertation phase. That you're ready to collect data and it's happening. So this is where you can start conducting the research itself once that proposal is submitted. But there are some formatting standards that they like to adhere to. Just like I mentioned before, for thesis or dissertation, there already exists a formatting manual that you can use on our website. But formatting is going to be that critical part of your thesis and dissertation process because it basically ensures that your document meets, established academic standards. So this manual on our website provides clear guidance on formatting from the different font types you can use, the different citation styles, style. The style manuals are like APA, MLA, Chicago, or if you're in the biology program, I know that they use a journal as the basis for their formatting. So they want you to write in the same formatting that you would submit to a particular academic journal. So keep that in mind. But overall, I'm sure that you know, as graduate students nearing the end of your program, you need to make sure that whatever of these that you're following the uniform font, margins, and like I said, you can use our guides that we have for the formatting standards. But typically, it's going to include all of the stuff that you'll see in a research paper with an addition of that approval page. So you'll have the title page, the approval page, the approval page, the abstract, your table of contents, and other preliminary materials that you need to actually start conducting your research. So following these guidelines here will ensure that your thesis or dissertation maintains a professional and standard look. Like I said, there's extensive guides, and the reason I'm not just going through the guides themselves, because each of them can be a little lengthy. They're about 29 to 30 pages each, just on the guide itself, but they're very helpful, especially if you don't exactly know what to write about. The thesis or dissertation structure, or rather the structure of your thesis or dissertation, is going to be paramount to its readability and organization. So the document itself, like the thesis, is divided into three preliminary parts, being the preliminary material, the main body, and any supplemental material. The preliminary section will include, your title, approval, and the abstract pages, as well as a list for contents, tables, and any figures, if applicable. The main body, of course, is going to consist of chapters, starting with the introduction and concluding with the final summary or the discussion, right? That's the bulk of the entire thesis or dissertation. Finally, any supplemental materials such as the bibliography or reference page, any appendices, and a Vita page at the end. The Vita page is basically your academic achievement so far and the trajectory that you're going. And ensuring each part of this is complete and in the right order will help your committee follow your work as it develops. Not only your committee, but also graduate school once it's done, because there is a submission process afterward. So the defense process is one of those final stages of your thesis or dissertation. You'll undergo two main defenses. One is after your proposal, and the other is after your final manuscript. So each defense requires a public presentation with no set time limit, and those are typically from 2 to 3 hours. So they'll usually post advertisements for it just on campus. They'll email faculty here if they want to join, and really you're opening yourself up to any questions regarding your project. So during your final defense, you'll present your findings with the committee and the public and open yourself up to any field questions. To best prepare, I would say meet with colleagues, meet with your peers, perhaps members of your cohort to ensure that you're able to prepare for as many questions as possible. Once questions concludes, the committee deliberates and votes on your performance. So in order to pass, you just need the majority vote from your committee because your committee will be your primary audience. But be prepared for questions from your committee as well as visitors. If you plan to do it this semester, I'll probably join in on your final proposal defense, just because I like to go to those. There's plenty that happen each semester. But be prepared for any sorts of questions. Think of the most critical questions that you can, and ultimately prepare yourself for an academic audience. After all, they're going to try to poke holes in your research, so it's good that you're well versed in your topic. During the defense, you won't actually read your thesis itself, but you can use some supplemental materials if allowed, such as a PowerPoint or anything else to help guide you. So be prepared for those two defenses. More importantly, the last one. That's where you make or break. So be prepared for questions from visitors. I think those are the most interesting ones. And between you and I, they tend to be the easier ones because they're not the experts in the field. Your committee might rip you apart though. So the submission deadlines. I did mention that there is going to be another presenter today that's going to talk more about specific deadlines, but I want to give you an overview on what they look like. So let's talk a little bit more about deadlines. I'm sure you're curious about that. So meeting TAMIU's submission deadlines is critical for your graduation eligibility. So you got to make sure that if you want to graduate in a particular semester, you meet these deadlines. And also, they're to better help you to ensure that you're prepared. So some of the deadlines for, like, let's say your proposal defense, we like to have 2 weeks before the end of the semester. You'll need to schedule it at least 2 weeks before the end. That way, the final defense, therefore, the final defense in that case needs to be at least 5 weeks before graduation. And then after obtaining the committee's approval, you'll submit the finalized document in a PDF format to Thesis at tamiu.edu. This is typically after it's been reviewed and looked at and ready for final submission. You send it off to them, and then they look over it for any, like a plagiarism check. They make sure the formatting's right, because after all of these specific graduate school guidelines are met, they will become publicly available. If you don't meet these deadlines where you're submitting 5 weeks or 2 weeks before, then we won't be able to give you those changes, and you might not have enough changes. You might not have enough time to make appropriate changes. So planning ahead and with your committee can help avoid those like last minute rushes. You want to give yourself some time. So right now we're heading close to about 5 weeks before graduation. I think we still got plenty of time. I think the first deadline is November 22nd. But like I said, we'll get more into that. And so when you're ready to finalize your manuscript, once you're successfully defended your work, there's a few final steps. Your manuscript must meet formatting standards as verified by the graduate school, and it needs approval from each committee member. You'll also need a written thesis and dissertation approval form that's signed by your committee, your department chair, and the college dean. This form is also available online, don't you worry, with all the other forms, and they're clearly labeled, so they're easy to access for all of you. So make sure all of the required corrections are incorporated into the final version, as these must be completed before you're cleared for graduation. So this final step, though administrative in the most part, ensures that your manuscript is ready for publication. And more importantly, that it meets TAMIU standards. Because once you do have a master's, you're going to be one of those representatives of TAMIU with the highest merit. You may want this to be publicly available. So there are some publication and copyright protocols that we like to advise you of. So people might be able to find your work afterwards. After all, once you graduate, it's a way to show tangible evidence that you are able to apply what you learned during your master's. Rather than just having a diploma, you can show that you can conduct research in a certain area and that you're an expert in the field. And more importantly, you can articulate it. So once your manuscript is complete, it's time for publication. So TAMIU requires that all theses and dissertations to be published digitally in the electronic thesis and dissertation database, or ETD database. This makes your work available to the academic community. You can also submit it to the registry at the TAMIU library. Once it's in the registry, it's also publicly available to TAMIU students. And you can specify when you want it to become available, like the availability timeline. Because if you're collaborating enough with your committee, you're really being thorough in your research, you may be eligible to publish in an actual academic journal. If so, you do need to hold that copyright form. And there is a copyright form that you need to submit. So that copyright form is also available on our website, and this will allow you to gain that control for your work to be posted online. So the copyright form and publishing online, this is mostly done through the graduate school office and the Killam library staff. So they can help guide you through this process, but really you just need that copyright form. This will ensure that your work is protected, however accessible to future researchers, right? And it does benefit you to have it publicly available, because not only will you have your thesis on paper and it'll show on your diploma, but you can put a link to where it's publicly available to a future employer, or if you're trying to get into a doctoral program, if you're getting your master's now, trying to get to a doctoral program, they can just access the registry in that way. It just looks better if it's publicly available. Lastly, what you've been waiting for, resources and support. So support is available at every step. TAMIU's writing consultants at the Advancing Research and Curriculum, or TAMIU ARC, where we're presenting this from. Our department can help you with this formatting, structuring for your thesis or dissertation. The Office of Research and Sponsored Projects houses the IRB and also the IACUC, in case you're working with animals, and biosafety approvals if your work involves any sensitive subjects. Additionally, the TAMIU Thesis and Dissertation Formatting Manual, like I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, serves as that detailed guide for formatting requirements. So these resources are going to become invaluable to your thesis journey. So don't hesitate to reach out to us for help as you navigate this complex process. The writing consultant email is there, but I'll also share a copy of this PowerPoint if you need it. So in conclusion, just following these guidelines will ensure a smooth process. Completing a thesis is a rigorous process. So by adhering to these guidelines and utilizing available resources, you'll have a smooth path forward. So remember, your committee and the TAMIU support staff are here to help you succeed. So don't hesitate to reach out and ensure that you're keeping track of the deadlines. So follow formatting requirements closely and make sure you seek guidance whenever you need. So I hope this overview has clarified the essentials at the very least. And I'm happy to go through our website now. And after that, the big one, thesis and dissertation resources. So let's click on this one. It scrolls to the bottom, and this is the tab here that gives you those official forms and manuals. So we got the policy manual. Let's click on that, and it gives you an overview, the initial factors to consider. Thesis and Dissertation Committee has a whole page on that. The submittal and review, basically what I was covering in the PowerPoint before, but this is just a formal document here. We also got the formatting manual, as mentioned before. Navigate to that, but it shows you the style manuals, how to do citations in case you have any problems with this. You can always refer back to this manual. There's a request for services on graduate advisory committees. This is the form I had mentioned before when choosing your advisory committee. So this is where you get the signatures, and this is all conveniently available in the same website accessible here. Your thesis or dissertation proposal cover sheet. You got your cover sheet right here. So this is what it's going to look like during that for when you're ready to submit the proposal. And there's also some detailed descriptions here on when you should use which form. You got the written thesis approval form for Master of Science and Master of Arts, as well as the one for a dissertation approval form. And then lastly, the copyright availability form. That last one I mentioned that you might use for the Killam library. It asks you for that option to hold if you need to hold. And of course, if you have questions, you could contact graduate school, the phone number there. Along with the forms here, we also have some thesis guides on what they would look like. We have the thesis and dissertation beginner guide, which is basically just a template, or sorry, a checklist to make sure you have everything you need if you still have questions after this presentation. A formatting guide, or sorry, a thesis template. This one I think is the best one because it helps you start. It doesn't make you start from scratch. You can start from a template if you wanted to, or if it's applicable to your program. And we have a three-part formatting guide, a thesis dissertation editing checklist, a thesis table of contents guide, a thesis defense and presentation guide, a thesis submission formatting checklist. We got it all. How many students I get come into our office asking us what the template should look like? Well, we have or what the thesis should look like. We have a template here that we use. So everything's in caps and clearly outlined. So this will help you. Text begins here, page is optional, et cetera, et cetera. And they have a section here for the abstract, a dedication if you choose to have one, acknowledgements, the table of contents, the list of figures, list of tables, abbreviations, the forward, and then I think there's sections on chapters. Yes. The chapter formatting, how it's in all caps, the sample text, et cetera, et cetera.
The last for, for about 4 years in my past job life, I helped to oversee the this process from the College of Arts and Sciences camp, as I call it. So it would go through the COAS Dean's office under my purview, along with the current Dean, Dr. Marcus Hidalgos. We would pretty much work in tandem to make sure that the theses were pretty much in the best quality possible before they went to grad school. And of course, a lot of what we would look at was from what I could pick up on, again, Donald really covered very well. It's like, yeah, that sounds right. You're bringing back memories of that, and yeah, it was a very effective, and it worked. My current role now in this process is primarily going to be with the turn it in kind of. It's a scary word, the plagiarism checker, but in my experience, there's never really been anything like that. The whole purpose of this is, again, the quality control to make sure what does get published, for the sake of potential employers, researchers, and other, vested members of, academia, to make sure it's in the best form possible. And one of the things that I would do is, and again, that I plan to do for this semester, is to go through each of the submissions, run through them, through turn it in, and I was able to verify earlier today if my old access still worked. I had like a Dropbox from like 2 years ago that was still active, and it's like, okay, let's test run a few submissions. I did one. I need to do a few others because I want to test it out like on a research paper, something of actual academic merit. But it took my first submission and it was able to, do it the way that it should. So I'll likely use that for the submissions for this semester. And honestly, it's really more of just making sure that, again, I know that there's like nuances in every discipline. For example, like in biology, if you try to change the term or the definition or even tweak it a little bit where it doesn't pick up on the plagiarism checker, you are kind of essentially changing the whole meaning of a paragraph or a sentence, and that is the last thing that we would want to do. My mentality at the time when I would help oversee a lot of this was you, the student, and your committee chair are the experts. Both you two know what is considered appropriate to for the wording, what has to stay a certain way, that kind of thing. And of course, I would bring up, if I have concerns like as an outsider, my background's in criminal justice, so there's a like a 90+% chance your thesis is not in that. A lot of them that we looked at were not in that field. So again, as an outsider, I would ask, if I picked up anything, like, hey, this might be changed a little bit. I'll ask if it has to be this way, and almost all the time it is. It's just has to stay that way. It never really got to anything substantial where we had to like turn away the thesis or anything like that. If any revisions was needed, it was maybe like a sentence or two, and even at that, because these theses are long research endeavors, like the percentage that we look at is much greater than you would expect from like maybe a regular casual research paper from when you were an undergrad or in your other classes. I believe what's considered standard, like for those kind of like research papers and things of that sort, you're kind of looking about give or take 20% on Turnitin. But because the thesis is much more, grand, I remember when Dr. Nelson and I would collab with this, generally we look at give or take 30%. And even at that, like even if it's a little bit more, most of the time there's like really not much revision that's needed. But again, this is something that I'll oversee. So again, I'll run each thesis submission through Turnitin. Of course, I'll do my due diligence to kind of just go through to see if there's anything that could potentially be altered and things of that sort. We'll be in contact with you. And I did speak with Dr. Tobin last week to kind of get a little bit more clarification with how things are running this semester. And he did bring up that there's going to be about a week, I believe, like as kind of the runway on the COAS end of things. So I know the grad school deadline for the submissions for the thesis submissions is the 29th. Oh, I'm sorry, that's for the proposals. I'm sorry, it's the 22nd. So for the theses, the full thesis will be the 22nd to grad school. However, on the COAS end of it, it would be a week earlier, so the 15th. So that gives like the 7 day runway for the COAS team to, of course, work on theses, make sure they're in the best shape possible before they go to grad school. And I do plan to meet with this team on the COAS end of things, hopefully sometime next week or maybe early into the week after. Again, I used to oversee a lot of the COAS end of things from about 2019 to about 2023. So for about 4 years, I was in close consultation with grad school on behalf of COAS to oversee a lot of these things. And I do want to make sure that the that team that's going to be taking over a good chunk of those duties, that they feel okay with, like they feel comfortable with tackling these theses. I'm not too sure how many submissions we're looking at this semester, but I know that there's times where it fluctuates 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 sometimes. And to knock those out in the space of 6, 7 days, it can be demanding. And of course, I like that there's a team, a dedicated team now to help out with this endeavor. But it's going to be their first time, and I want to make sure that they feel comfortable, because if they feel comfortable, if they feel confident with knowing how to optimize their time, then that means that's less stress on you, the student, as well. And that's kind of where I'm coming from with a lot of this. I know that 7 day runway, and then when it goes to grad school, it might be a little bit, a stress inducing. You kind of want to make sure that the thesis, like, hey, you defended, you got the approval, you did all the hard work. Now it's kind of like that waiting game of trying to get hear back and feedback, and then go back and forth, that kind of thing. Rest assured that when I do meet with this team, I do want to share as much as I can on what worked out for me, so that if it works out for me, it works out for them, which I would hope in effect can also work out for you guys, the students. So yeah, that's the main message that I want to get across. That you all are not alone. Where we're not out to hurt you or to prevent you from graduating. I can say with 100% confidence that again, in the 4 years in which I oversaw a lot of this on COAS's end, we never had to turn away anyone from graduating. If we ever needed to send a thesis back for like revisions and things like that, which was kind of common, but we always did it in a timely manner. If there was anything that we could do ourselves, we would take care of that too. And again, I do want to make sure that when I do meet with this team, that I share as much of my experience and knowledge as possible with them, so that they're in good hands. Which again, I feel pretty confident. Donald Trevino has been pretty transparent, and I do see like yeah, like I think you guys are in a really good shape going forward. I also spoke with Dr. Tobin. He feels it's pretty strongly about the team that he has assembled, and I do look forward to meeting with them so I can kind of give them my take of things so that they can make again all this whole process as not as stress inducing for you guys the students. So with all that said, I mean that's kind of it really on my end. Again, like in some I'll oversee the plagiarism Trinidad side of things, but in that I've gotten used to over the years, it's not really anything substantial. We've never had that, so knock on wood, let's keep that streak going.
This shows us the pre-thesis, the proposal phase, where you select the graduate committee up until submitting research approval, and then the final stage portion, finishing your manuscript up until reviewing and formatting.